I opened a group message from my parents, expecting a casual family update. Instead, I read the words that would echo in my mind for days. We've discussed it, and we think it's best if you step away from the family, for now. No explanation, no compassion, just a cold dismissal. As I stared at the screen in disbelief, a notification popped up. My aunt had reacted with a thumbs up, as if exile was something to celebrate. That's when I realized I hadn't just lost connection, I'd been silently voted out. Imagine dedicating your entire life, pouring your brilliance into something, only for the people closest to you to decide you're disposable. That's exactly what happened to me. Hi, I'm Heather. I'm 32, and last month, my own family, the people I'd built an empire for, decided I wasn't worth keeping around. And let me tell you, that decision came back to bite them harder than they could have ever imagined. It started with a group message from my parents, cold and clinical. We think it's best you step away for now. My aunt, my father's sister, actually thumbs-upped it. That was the moment. That was the betrayal. So I wrote back, just 2 lines. Understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family fund too. Short. Professional. And a total bombshell they had no idea about. That very night, I cut off my contribution. And then, at 2:15 a.m., my phone just exploded. By sunrise, I had 89 missed calls. My dad left a voicemail, pure panic in his voice. What happened? The bank flagged everything. I just replied with the same calm I felt. I'm honoring your decision. Oh, they had no idea what I truly had. Not yet. To understand this, you need to know about my family. We weren't just any wealthy clan, we were the Millers. Our name? It basically echoed through financial circles across all of New England. My grandfather built Miller Financial Advisors from absolutely nothing, 3 generations ago, right after the war. And I grew up watching my dad, Robert Miller, take that legacy and just explode it. Our house? A massive colonial, crammed with signs of success, expensive art, imported furniture, photos of my parents rubbing shoulders with politicians and celebrities. And my mom, Diana, was the picture-perfect corporate wife, hosting these elaborate dinner parties where multi-million-dollar deals were sealed over her famous apple pie. That was our world. But here's the thing about me. From a really young age, I was obsessed with numbers. Seriously. While my cousins were playing with toys, I was glued to my dad's stock reports. By the time I was 10, I was asking questions about market trends that even he couldn't answer. And you know what that created? This uncomfortable, weird dynamic that just followed me straight into adulthood. Even after graduating top of my class from Wharton, with double majors in finance and economics, my family, my own flesh and blood, still saw me as this little girl who needed guidance. Can you believe it? So, when I finally joined Miller Financial at 24, my dad, Robert, decided to put me under the supervision of my cousin, Jake. Jake. The guy who barely scraped by his business classes at a state college. My father had the nerve to pat my shoulder, this condescending look on his face, and say, Heather, you need to understand how we do things in the real world. Jake's been here longer. Longer? Jake had been there exactly 7 months longer. 7 months. But I bit my tongue. For the next 8 years, I quietly became the firm's secret weapon. Their most valuable asset. My investment strategies weren't just good, they were phenomenal. I consistently outperformed market averages by 7 to 9%. The industry standard was celebrating 2% gains, and I was doing almost 5 times that. Clients, our biggest clients, started specifically requesting me. But of course, in board meetings, my father would always take the credit for my team's performance. My team. It was my strategy, my brain, my work. Then there was the family fund. This was a separate thing from the main business, a $12 million pool we all contributed to, used for everything from new ventures to vacation homes. Over the years, my personal contribution grew to $4.2 million. That was nearly 35% of the total fund. And what none of them knew was that I'd been quietly building my own separate investment portfolio since college. While they were vacationing in the Hamptons every summer, I was meeting startup founders and angel investors. While they were buying luxury cars, I was buying minority stakes in emerging tech companies. I was laying the groundwork. Last Thanksgiving, my Uncle William made a big toast, the whole Miller family business, where we all pull our weight and share the rewards equally speech. Everyone cheered. This was after my division had just generated 62% of the company's profits that quarter. 62%. I just smiled, raised my glass, and made a mental note: time to accelerate my exit strategy. Our monthly family meetings were held in this ridiculously fancy, mahogany-paneled conference room downtown. I'd present these detailed analyses, these growth projections, and without fail, my Uncle Richard would interrupt me with something like, "That's all very technical, Heather, but what does your father think?" And my mother, bless her heart, would pull me aside afterward with this well-meaning, but utterly infantilizing advice. "Honey, men don't like women who sound too smart. You need to let your father and uncles feel important." Important? Then there was my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister. The one who thumbs-upped my exclusion. She never worked a day in the business, but she sat on the board and got the same profit share as those of us pulling 60-hour weeks. Her talent? Taking credit for other people's ideas, especially mine. I remember this one time, just 3 weeks after I presented a detailed European expansion plan that they tabled for further consideration, she just announced at a meeting, "Remember when Heather mentioned international markets? I've been thinking we should expand into Europe." It was infuriating. My cousin Amanda, though, she saw it. She was the only one. Over lunch one day, she confided in me. "They do the same thing to me," she said. "But worse, because I don't have your financial skills to make them money. They just want me to marry someone useful to the business." Despite all of this, all the slights, all the dismissals, I stayed loyal. I genuinely believed that eventually, my contributions would be recognized. My worth would be respected. So I kept pouring my talents into growing their wealth, while quietly, relentlessly, building my own safety net. By my 32nd birthday, my personal investments had quietly swelled to $17 million. $17 million! A fact I kept completely to myself. I bought a beautiful brownstone in Back Bay, but under an LLC, not my name. I gutted the home office, installing state-of-the-art tech. I hired a small, loyal team who worked directly for me, totally separate from the family business, all under strict NDAs. I even secured patents for several financial algorithms I'd developed during my hobby time on weekends. I never flaunted it. I drove a modest car, lived well below my means, and kept showing up at Miller Financial every single day, making money for people who absolutely did not appreciate me. Some might call it strategic patience. Others? Conflict avoidance. Either way, it was about to change. The quarterly planning meeting last month started like any other. The whole extended family, crammed into our conference room, my father, Robert, at the head of the table. I had prepared this massive, comprehensive presentation on a new investment strategy, one that could potentially boost our high-net-worth clients' returns by 12%. As I handed out my carefully prepared reports, my cousin Jake sauntered in, 15 minutes late, carrying nothing but a coffee cup and his phone. "Sorry I'm late," he announced, sounding anything but sorry. "I was just wrapping up a call with the Donovan account." The Donovan account was my client. I just asked Jake to sit in on one preliminary call while I finished my quarterly projections. My father beamed. "No problem, son. Client relationships always come first. Why don't you tell us how that's going before Heather starts with all her numbers?" Just like that. 20 minutes of my meeting gone. Devoted to Jake taking credit for 6 months of my work with the Donovans. I sat there, quietly seething, watching family members nod approvingly as Jake completely misrepresented key aspects of the strategy one had developed. When it was finally my turn to present, I had barely gotten through my second slide when Uncle Richard cleared his throat. This all seems unnecessarily complicated, he said, not even trying to hide his dismissive tone. Our clients trust the Miller name because we keep things simple and reliable. Aunt Patricia nodded vigorously. Exactly. All these algorithms and technical strategies just confuse people. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. Actually, our client surveys indicate they're specifically coming to us for more sophisticated approaches. The market has changed, and if we don't adapt, we'll start losing accounts to firms that are embracing these new methodologies. My father tapped his pen on the table. That was his signal. He was getting impatient. Heather, theory is one thing, but we deal in practical realities here. This isn't theory, I replied, my voice tighter now. I've already implemented this approach with the Westfield portfolio as a test case. They've seen a 14% return in just one quarter. There was this shocked, surprised silence. Then my father spoke. You implemented this without authorization? That's not how we do things here. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I discussed it with you last month. You said to do whatever I thought best with the Westfield account since it was underperforming. He scoffed. I certainly didn't authorize a complete strategy overhaul. But we both knew he had barely listened during that conversation, completely distracted by a golf tournament on the office TV. Jake, of course, jumped in. I have a simpler approach we could consider. He had nothing. No slides, no data, not even a notepad. Yet, for the next 30 minutes, the family listened, captivated, as he essentially repackaged ideas I had presented last year, conveniently missing the key components that would actually make them work. Now, that's the kind of straightforward thinking clients expect from the Miller name, my father said proudly when Jake finished. Let's develop Jake's approach for next quarter. I felt a cold dread settle in. After the meeting, I tried to speak with my father privately in his office. Dad, I'm concerned about the direction we're taking. The strategy Jake proposed has significant gaps that could expose clients to unnecessary risk. My father was checking sports scores on his phone. Heather, you're too caught up in the details. This business was built on relationships and instinct, not just numbers and charts. But the numbers and charts are what keep us compliant with regulations and actually growing client wealth, I pointed out. He finally looked up, his expression hardening. You know what your problem is? You've never trusted the family way of doing things. Always thinking your fancy degree makes you smarter than everyone else. I was stunned. That's not true. I've dedicated my entire career to this family business. And we appreciate that, sweetheart, he said, a patronizing smile on his face. But sometimes you need to remember that you're still learning how things work in the real world. I was 32 years old, managing over $300 million in client assets, with a track record that had helped double the firm's value in 8 years. And I was still learning. As I left his office, I overheard my Aunt Patricia talking to my uncle in the break room. Heather's presentations give me a headache, she was saying. She's throwing around all those charts and big words like she's trying to make the rest of us feel stupid. My uncle agreed. The girl doesn't understand our culture. Never has. I quietly stepped away, a cold, hard realization settling deep in my stomach. I went back to my office and closed the door, sitting in silence. For the very first time, I allowed myself to accept what a part of me had always known. I would never be fully respected in my family business, no matter what I contributed. That evening, instead of joining the family for our usual post-meeting dinner, I went home to my brownstone and began meticulously reviewing my personal affairs. I double-checked that all my independent business dealings were legally separated from family assets. I confirmed that my patents and intellectual property were securely in my name alone. I reviewed client contracts, making sure I knew exactly which relationships were legally tied to me personally, rather than the firm. I wasn't planning anything specific yet, but something had fundamentally shifted inside me, and I knew I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The next week brought more subtle slights and dismissals. In a client meeting, my father interrupted my explanation of a tax strategy to translate it to English. essentially oversimplifying my advice to the point of inaccuracy. At a staff training session, Jake presented one of my risk assessment models as his own creation. And my Aunt Patricia, accidentally, left me off the email chain for an important family business discussion. Then came the final straw. I arrived early at the office on Tuesday, ready to prepare for a meeting with our largest client. Only to find the meeting had been moved up. It was already in progress. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see my father, Jake, and two other family members sitting with clients I had worked with for years. I stood frozen in the hallway, watching as they showed the client's presentation slides I had created. As the client nodded approvingly, my father and Jake exchanged these self-congratulatory glances. Later that day, I discovered they had also scheduled a strategic planning retreat for the following weekend at my uncle's lake house. Every single person on the family leadership team was invited. Except me. That night, I sat in my home office until late, staring at my computer screen, but not really seeing it. Years of memories cycled through my mind, all the times my ideas had been dismissed, only to be celebrated when presented by someone else. All the extra hours I'd worked to prove my worth. All the growth I'd created for a family that would never, ever see me as an equal. Enough. I whispered to the empty room. Whatever happened next, I knew I was done being undervalued. Done being overlooked. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification from our family WhatsApp group. My father had created this group 2 years ago for efficient communication, though it had mostly become a place for sharing golf scores and vacation photos. The message from my father read, "After considerable discussion among the senior family members, we think it would be best if Heather steps away from client management for now. We appreciate her background work, but recent feedback suggests clients respond better to our traditional approach. This isn't permanent, just a chance to realign with the Miller way of doing things." I stared at the screen, watching as responses started flooding in. My Uncle Richard. Completely agree. Smart move. Aunt Patricia and Cousin Jake. Happy to take over her accounts in the transition. My mother. We only want what's best for everyone. 2 other cousins added their own affirmative responses. Not a single person objected. Not one. No one even asked what client feedback they were referring to, which was telling, since I managed our client satisfaction surveys and knew our numbers were excellent. I felt an odd, chilling sense of calm as I watched this unfold. After years of trying to prove my worth. After all the revenue I had generated. After all the growth I had created for them. This was what it came down to. A group text. Removing me from my role. Without even the courtesy of a private conversation first. I waited. Exactly 17 minutes. During that time, several more supportive messages appeared from various family members, including some who had previously claimed to be on my side during office disagreements. Finally I typed, "Understood. I'll respect that decision and step away from the family fund, too, wishing everyone continued success." Short. Professional. And containing a bombshell they didn't yet understand. I put my phone on silent and placed it face down on my desk. Then I opened my laptop and logged into the banking portal for our family fund. As a major contributor and one of the fund administrators, I had full access to the account. The process was surprisingly simple. A few clicks to initiate the withdrawal of my entire contribution, $4.2 million. Plus the accurate portion of growth attributable to my investments within the fund, which added another $1.7 million. The system asked if I was sure. I was. I then sent a formal email to our family attorney documenting my withdrawal from the fund, citing the specific section of our family agreement that allowed major contributors to exit with proper notice. I blind copied myself on a separate email account for records. The family fund had always operated with a liquidity requirement, keeping at least 50% of assets in easily accessible accounts. This meant my withdrawal wouldn't bounce due to insufficient liquid assets. But it would immediately, dramatically, alter the fund's structure and capacity. Our banking alerts were set to notify all administrators of any transaction over $50,000. I was counting on the fact that most family members, enjoying their Friday evening, wouldn't check those notifications until much later. With that done, I sent another email to my private team, informing them of upcoming changes and setting a meeting for Monday morning. I then went to my home safe and retrieved all the key documents I had carefully organized over the years: copies of patents, client contracts with my personal service clauses, documentation of my independent business entities, and irrefutable evidence of which investment strategies were legally mine rather than the firm's. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my living room, looking out at the Boston skyline as dusk settled over the city. A part of me felt a twinge of sadness at the bridge I was burning. These were, after all, the people I had grown up with, worked alongside, and tried to please for my entire life. But a stronger part of me felt something else. Liberation. The constant need to prove myself. To swallow slights. To watch less qualified people take credit for my work. It was over. Whatever happened next, I would no longer be the overlooked daughter trying to earn a seat at a table that had been designed to exclude me. My phone started buzzing around 7:30 p.m. I glanced at it once, saw several WhatsApp notifications and texts from various family members, but I didn't read them. Instead, I turned on a movie I'd been wanting to watch, ordered my favorite takeout, and gave myself permission to simply enjoy my Friday evening. At exactly 10:47 p.m., my phone rang with my father's specific ringtone. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. And again. On the fourth call, I turned my phone off completely. I slept surprisingly well that night. When I turned my phone back on at 7 a.m. Saturday morning, I had to wait several minutes for all the notifications to finish loading. 64 missed calls. 127 text messages. 43 WhatsApp messages. 17 voicemails. I made myself coffee before listening to any of them. The first voicemail, from 10:48 p.m. Heather, it's Dad. Call me immediately about this fund transfer. There must be some mistake. The second, from 11:10 p.m. Heather, this is completely unacceptable. Whatever point you're trying to make, this isn't the way. Call me back now. The messages grew increasingly urgent through the night. By the 2:15 a.m. voicemail, my father's voice had lost its anger and held naked panic. What happened? The bank has flagged everything. The fund is completely frozen due to suspicious activity. You need to call me back right now. The most recent one, from 6:30 a.m., was different. My father's voice was quieter, with a tone I'd rarely heard from him: uncertainty. Heather, I don't understand what's happening. Whatever we did to upset you, this seems extreme. The entire family fund is locked down. The bank needs your verification to unfreeze the accounts since you initiated the transaction. Please call me back, please. I finished my coffee, took a shower, and dressed in my favorite outfit, a well-tailored blue suit that always gave me confidence. Only then did I send a single text message to my father. I'm honoring your decision. You asked me to step away, and I have. I've withdrawn my personal contribution as allowed under Section 7.3 of the Family Fund Agreement. The bank freeze is standard procedure for large transactions and will resolve once they complete their verification process. I've already submitted my documentation to them. Within seconds, my phone rang. I declined the call. Then I sent one more text. I'll be available to discuss this on Monday at 9 a.m. at my home office. The address has been emailed to you. Then I turned off notifications and prepared to enjoy my weekend, knowing that across town, my family was just beginning to realize what I had done. And that it was only the start. What I didn't tell my family was that I had a friend at the bank. Nothing improper, nothing that would violate banking regulations. But Sandra and I had gone to college together, and she now worked as a senior manager at the institution handling our family fund. She couldn't share specific information, but she did call me Saturday afternoon. Your family is creating quite a scene, she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Your father has been on the phone with 3 different departments. Your uncle showed up in person and demanded to speak with the president of the bank. I'm sorry about that, I replied. Don't be, Sandra said. From what I can tell, everything you did was completely by the book. The freeze is just standard protocol when a significant percentage of a large fund is withdrawn suddenly. It's an anti-fraud measure. I know, I said. And I've already submitted all the documentation showing I'm entitled to those funds, which is why it should be resolved by Monday, she confirmed. Though I doubt that will calm them down in the meantime. She wasn't wrong. Through various notifications that kept appearing despite my efforts to mute them, I caught glimpses of the family meltdown. My phone would light up with preview snippets. Uncle Richard. This is sabotage. She can't just. Aunt Patricia. I always said she was too emotional too. Cousin Jake. What about the Henderson deal we were counting on? My mother. Heather, honey, please just talk to us. We can fix. By Saturday evening, the tone of the messages had begun to shift from outrage to desperation. The family had apparently begun to understand the full implications of my withdrawal. The Henderson deal Jake mentioned? That was a $20 million commercial real estate project the family had been planning to invest in. The fund would have provided the down payment, with financing covering the rest. Without my portion, they were now significantly short of the required cash, and the bank freeze meant they couldn't access even the remaining funds in time to save the deal. 6 months of work and a potential $3 million profit were evaporating. My cousin Amanda was the only one who sent a different kind of message. Good for you. They never appreciated what you brought to the table. Want to get coffee next week? I actually smiled at that one and sent back a simple yes. Saturday night brought a new wave of calls and messages. This time, it wasn't just family members. Clients had apparently begun to hear rumors and were concerned about their accounts. My father had actually given out my personal cell number, suggesting people contact me directly about the temporary technical issue with some accounts. This crossed the line. Involving outside clients in a family dispute? Unacceptable. I spent 2 hours sending carefully worded reassurances to clients, clarifying that their individual investment accounts were completely separate from the family fund and entirely unaffected. I also noted that I would be happy to discuss their portfolios directly on Monday if they had any concerns. I was careful not to disparage the family business or give any indication of the internal conflict. These were relationships I had built over years, and regardless of what was happening with my family, I maintained my professional ethics. Around midnight, our family attorney, Jonathan, called. Unlike the others, he was calm and measured. Heather, I've reviewed your withdrawal documentation, and everything appears to be in order legally. However, the timing and manner of this action have created significant challenges for the family operations. I understand that, I replied. But as you've confirmed, I've acted within my rights. He paused. Your father has asked me to propose an immediate restoration of the funds with a renegotiated leadership role for you within the company. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I'm not making any decisions right now. I'm happy to discuss options on Monday morning. Another pause. He's also mentioned the possibility of legal action regarding intellectual property and client relationships. Now it was my turn to pause. This was a weak threat, and Jonathan knew it. All of my patents and proprietary strategies are registered in my name personally, not the company's. As for client relationships, I'm sure you've reviewed the contracts and noticed the personal service clauses in many of them. But again, I'm happy to discuss all of this on Monday. He sighed. I'll relay your position. For what it's worth, I've advised against any legal posturing. It wouldn't serve anyone's interests. I agree, I said. Good night, Jonathan. By Sunday morning, the family strategy had shifted again. Now came the emotional appeals. My mother left a tearful voicemail about family loyalty, and how my grandfather would be disappointed. My Aunt Patricia, the one who had given the thumbs up to push me out, now sent a long message about how she had always admired my business acumen, and felt we needed to support each other as women in finance. Uncle Richard tried a different approach, sending a gruff text, suggesting I was overreacting to standard business restructuring, and needed to get over my hurt feelings for the good of the family. I prepared for Monday's meeting, meticulously organizing all my documentation and planning my talking points. I wasn't interested in revenge or drama. I simply wanted recognition of my value and respect for my contributions. Sunday night, my home security system alerted me to someone at my door. Through the camera, I saw my father standing there, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His normally perfectly pressed shirt was wrinkled, and he seemed to have aged years in 2 days. I considered not answering, sticking to my Monday morning timeline, but something in his defeated posture moved me. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "Heather," he said, his voice strained. "The Henderson deal falls through tomorrow at 9 a.m. If we don't have the funds, it's $3 million down the drain." I looked at him steadily. "That sounds like a business problem that needs a business solution." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means I'm willing to help if we're talking business, not family emotions. 9 a.m. tomorrow at my home office as arranged. Bring whoever you want from the family leadership." He looked like he wanted to say more, to push for an immediate resolution, but something in my expression must have told him it would be useless. 9 a.m., he confirmed, then turned and walked back to his car. I closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. For perhaps the first time in my professional life, my father had come to me in need, rather than the other way around. Tomorrow would be a new kind of family meeting. One where I set the terms. I slept fitfully that night, waking several times to check the security system. Part of me worried that more family members might show up, but the house remained quiet. By 6 a.m., I was up and preparing. I set up my dining room as a conference space, with copies of relevant documents at each seat. I made coffee and arranged a tray of pastries, a professional touch that also gave me something normal to focus on. At 8:30, my security system alerted me again. They were early. Through the camera, I saw not just my father, but also Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, Cousin Jake, and our attorney Jonathan. The family had brought their full leadership contingent. Good. I was ready for all of them. At precisely 8:59, I opened my front door. My father stood at the front of the group, with the others arranged behind him like some sort of family business army. Their expressions ranged from my father's tense determination to Jake's poorly concealed hostility to Aunt Patricia's sudden, sickening attempt at warmth. "Come in," I said simply, stepping aside. They filed into my home, some of them looking around with obvious surprise at my tastefully appointed brownstone. I had never invited family to my personal space before, and I could see them reassessing things as they noted the original artwork and high-end furnishings. "The dining room is set up for our meeting," I directed, leading them through the hallway. As they took seats around my table, I remained standing at the head, a position my father typically occupied in family meetings. He noticed this immediately, but said nothing as he took a chair to my right. "Coffee?" I offered, maintaining a professional demeanor. A few mumbled acceptances, and I calmly poured cups before taking my place at the head of the table. The silence stretched for a moment before my father cleared his throat. "Heather, we're here to resolve this situation quickly. The Henderson deal." I raised my hand, cutting him off, a gesture he had used countless times on me. "Before we discuss any specific deals, we need to address the larger situation. I've withdrawn my contribution from the family fund, as is my right. The bank has confirmed the transaction is proper, and the freeze should be lifted by noon today." "This is ridiculous," Uncle Richard burst out. "You're holding the family hostage over what, a bruised ego? Because we suggested you take a different role?" I turned to him with a calm I didn't entirely feel. "This isn't about ego, Uncle Richard. This is about value and respect. For 8 years, I've generated consistent returns above market average. My division has brought in 62% of company profits. My client satisfaction ratings are the highest in the firm. Yet I was removed from client management via group text, Without discussion, based on claimed feedback that doesn't exist. We were going to discuss it in detail at the retreat. Aunt Patricia interjected, her voice honey-sweet. Honey, sweetie. We just wanted to get the basic decision communicated first. The retreat I wasn't invited to, I pointed out. That was an oversight, my father said quickly. Jake snorted. Come on, Heather. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. So you got your feelings hurt. Did you have to blow up a major deal over it? I turned to Jake, maintaining my composure. I didn't blow up anything. I simply withdrew my personal contribution, which happened to be a larger percentage than anyone anticipated. That reveals the real problem here. You've all been taking my contribution for granted, both financially and professionally. My father leaned forward. Whatever mistakes we've made, and I admit there may have been some, this response is disproportionate. You've put a $3 million deal in jeopardy. A deal that apparently couldn't happen without my money. Yet I wasn't consulted on, I noted. Jonathan, our attorney, spoke up for the first time. Perhaps we could focus on immediate solutions first, then address the longer-term concerns afterward. The Henderson deadline is the most time-sensitive issue. I nodded. That's reasonable. I'm prepared to wire $5 million to the family fund this morning, sufficient to cover the Henderson down payment with a buffer. Everyone started talking at once, relief evident in their voices, until I raised my hand again. But this will be structured as a loan from my personal holdings to the family fund, with standard market interest rates and specific repayment terms. Jonathan can draw up the paperwork immediately. The relief around the table faltered. A loan? My father asked, incredulous. You're going to charge your own family interest? This is a business transaction, I replied evenly. Which is how you've always insisted we approach things at Miller Financial. I'm offering market-rate financing on extremely short notice to save a valuable deal. Any other lender would charge significantly higher rates given the time constraints. Jonathan nodded reluctantly. She's right. It's actually quite a reasonable offer under the circumstances. My uncle's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is extortion. No, I corrected. This is negotiation. The alternative is to let the Henderson deal fall through, which serves no one's interests. My father studied me for a long moment. I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes, weighing pride against practicality, emotion against business. Fine, he finally said. Jonathan, draw up the loan agreement. But Heather, after this, we expect you to return to your role at the company and reinvest in the family fund. We can discuss a more appropriate leadership position for you. I shook my head. That's not on the table today. The loan for the Henderson deal is a separate matter. My future involvement with Miller Financial and the family fund will require a completely new agreement. Aunt Patricia leaned toward me, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a sympathetic tone. Heather, dear, I understand you're upset. We all say and do things in the heat of the moment, but we're family. Yes, we are, I agreed. And families should treat each other with respect. The group message asking me to step away made it clear how much my contributions are valued. That was poorly handled, my father admitted. I take responsibility for that, but surely we can move past a single communication mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I said quietly. It was a symptom of a pattern that's existed for years. My ideas are dismissed until someone else presents them. My achievements are attributed to team effort, while others are celebrated individually. My professional judgment is questioned despite consistent results. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. I've brought millions in profit to this family, and in return, I've been treated as an afterthought. That ends today. The room fell silent as the full impact of my words sank in. For the first time, I wasn't backing down or smoothing things over. I wasn't accepting a pat on the head and a promise to do better next time. Finally, Jake broke the silence with a dismissive laugh. This is all very dramatic, but let's be realistic. You need the Miller name and connections as much as we need your number crunching. Where exactly do you think you're going to go? That was the opening I had been waiting for. I smiled at Jake's question. That brings us to the next item on our agenda. I pressed a button on a small remote, and the large television on the dining room wall lit up with a presentation. The first slide showed a logo I had designed myself, Heather Miller Capital Management. I've been operating my own investment firm as a separate entity for the past 4 years. I explained, advancing to the next slide, which showed impressive growth charts. My personal clients have enjoyed average returns of 17%, compared to the 9% at Miller Financial. The shocked expressions around the table gave me a satisfaction I tried hard not to show. That's not possible, my father said, utterly dumbfounded. You've been working full-time at our firm. When would you have had time to run another business? Evenings, weekends, the vacation days I never took, I replied. While everyone else was at the lake house or on European trips, I was building something of my own. Uncle Richard's face had moved from red to nearly purple. This is a violation of your employment contract. You can't compete with the family business. I slid a document across the table to Jonathan. My employment contract specifically allows for personal investment activities as long as they don't directly solicit Miller Financial clients. I've adhered to that completely. Jonathan skimmed the document and gave a reluctant nod. She's technically correct. The clause was intended to cover personal stock trading, but it's broadly worded. I advanced to the next slide, showing a list of patents. I also hold 7 patents for financial algorithms and trading systems. All registered to me personally, not Miller Financial. Those were developed while you worked for us, my father argued, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. They were developed on my own time. Using my own resources? I corrected. I've maintained meticulous documentation to establish that the patents are legally mine. The next slide showed a client list, a modest but impressive collection of names, none of whom were current Miller Financial clients. I've built relationships with 27 high-net-worth clients, completely separate from our family business. I continued. Their combined assets under my management total just over $400 million. Jake let out a low whistle despite himself. Furthermore, I said,